Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so you don't want to see me salsa dance. Um, so I have to say it's great being here, and I'm really impressed by what you're doing with this country brand thing. I've never seen anything like this, and the more I learn about Costa Rica, I've been here a few times, but it's a far more amazing country than even I knew. So very impressed. I think you're ahead of your time in what's going on here. What I wanted to talk about today is what's going on in digital marketing. And I think it represents a real opportunity for many of the businesses in this room to punch above your weight level, to be able to have a competitive advantage against other companies, not just in Costa Rica, but around the world. And I'm also going to share with you some insights into how social selling is a very cost-effective way for you to grow your businesses. So first, a little background on me and our company. I founded WSI back in 1995, and that was in the year 1 BG, 1 year before Google. And so we've been around for a long time, 22 years, and we're the largest network of digital agencies in the world, over 1,000 offices in 80 countries now. And our real focus is around small and medium-sized businesses. So when you look at everything that's going on with digital, a lot of times businesses say, you know, that's good for big companies, but that's too expensive for me, or it's too technical or too advanced for me. And technology has really become advanced, but WSI's role is helping small and medium-sized businesses tap into what's possible. I'm going to take you in a time machine back in time, and I have to say, my special effects are not nearly as spectacular as Regilio's. I'm going to take you backwards 20 years to the year 1996, and that was McDonald's website. One of the biggest brands in the world, most sophisticated in technology, and that was their website. 20 years later, if you look at this image here, this may look like a map of the New York subway system or of the London subway system, but what it is a digital strategy map. That is a strategy that we would do for a business like yours to help you understand how to leverage technology. Now, at the center of that, you'll see that the website, 22 years later, is still at the center of an internet strategy. It all begins with a website, but there's so many other parts of this. There's email and CRM. There is inbound marketing. Many of you have begun to hear about this concept of inbound marketing, the way we can generate leads into our business through the internet. Mobile, which I'm going to talk a bit about, is something that's exploding. The majority of traffic now on the internet is coming through mobile devices. How we're using social, and social selling is an example of that. How companies are using Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. Paid search. I mean, that Google's entire empire, 90% of its profits today still come from paid search. But they're not the only ones. There's Bing with Microsoft as well. So how companies are using paid search, and then the analytics, the information that's driving, that we're learning about our customers. So because it is very complex, WSI plays the role of a digital Sherpa. I mean, imagine you were dropped in the middle of the New York subway system and you didn't know where you were and you didn't know how to get to where you want to go. It would be really great if a guide came alongside you, or a Sherpa, and helped guide you from point A to point B. And that's essentially what we do at WSI. To give you an idea of how complex it is, a number of years ago, a group called Martech created a map of all the different logos of different technologies, digital marketing technologies, and every year they kept adding new logos as new technologies emerged. This is last year's addition to the slide, over 5,000 marketing technologies that businesses can use to harness the internet. So it's very complex, but we've tried to boil all that down and make it very simple. In fact, WSI has literally written the book on digital marketing. It's 12 chapters, a book we call Digital Minds. It's now in its second edition, an international bestseller, published in 4 languages. The second edition, Spanish edition, just came off the press this month. So you can actually get that from the WSI people. They can arrange to get you a copy of that, but it's one of the highest rated digital marketing books on Amazon. And I kind of like to say that we've got about the same rating as the Harry Potter books, which is kind of cool. So a lot of times when people think about digital, they think about high-tech companies like Amazon and others. But 75% of everything that's going on in digital is going on within traditional bricks and mortar companies. Companies like many of your businesses sitting in the room here today. It's not just for high-tech companies. What I want to do today is give you a brief look at some of the different things you may want to think about. I'm not going to get deep into anything, but I'm going to go wide and narrow to give you some snapshots of some of the things you can do within your business to leverage digital. So think of it like going to a buffet or a smorgasbord. Take a few things. If you walk out with one or two ideas that you can take back, implement in your business, and make you more profitable, then mission accomplished. So the first thing we need to begin with when we talk about digital marketing is we need to begin with a strategy. And the concept of measure twice, cut once. Some of you in your businesses, you may have had these young, technical people saying, we need to get PPC going. We need a social strategy. We got to get our LinkedIn or our Facebook page set up. But the reality is we want to begin with a strategy instead of beginning with tactics and working back up. And that's, in the physical world, that makes a lot of sense. We wouldn't begin building a house without a blueprint. And reality is if we look at examples of where people started building and then planning, it looks like this. And these are real pictures of things that ended up happening. This kind of a driveway wouldn't work well in Canada, where I'm from, in the winter. So the reality is that this has not changed in thousands of years. Sun Tzu wrote the book, The Art of War, and he said, all men can see these tactics whereby I conquer, but what none can see is the strategy out of which victory has evolved. And that's what we want to begin with, is a strategy to be victorious in your business so you can be more profitable, to gain market share. The reality, this is a real picture of a surfer in South Africa, Mick Fanning, one of the top surfers in the world, and he was in 2015 in a surfing competition, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, something showed up. And the reality is most businesses, we all have competition. We all have competition that's circling us, but most people don't look at what their competition is doing while the competition is circling them at all times. So the first thing we need to do is understand what the competition is doing, and then we need to also understand what's going on in the industry, in the world, in terms of technologies. One of the things WSI does is we do something we call stealth profiling, where we actually look at your competitors' websites and we look at how much traffic is coming to their sites. Most people don't realize that we can actually track how much traffic is going to your competitors' sites. We can see how much they're spending on their advertising. We'll look at what they're doing on their LinkedIn strategy as far as social selling. We're going to look at the demographics and the psychographics of their traffic. What are the kinds of people that are coming to their website? And how does that compare to the people that are coming to your website? What can we learn about your customers? What can we learn about the people who come to your site and don't become customers? There's a lot we can learn from our competitors. But then we need to look at what's going on in the world. And there's a woman in Silicon Valley named Mary Meeker. She works for a company called Kleiner Perkins. And every year, every May, she comes out with this thing called the Internet Trends Report. And you can Google it if you like, because as digital marketers and thought leaders, we sit on the edge of our chair every year in May, the third week, where Mary Meeker's report comes out. This is a 355-page report last year. Now, you probably don't want to read through that report. That's what we do at WSI, and we want to bring to you what's really meaningful there. Out of those 355 slides, there's one slide that really stood out for me as impacting, and it's this slide here. This is the graph of where your customers are spending their time, what media they're spending their time consuming. And it's showing you where you, as business people, are spending your money advertising. Now, this is in the United States, so it's going to be slightly different here because the cool thing about the way the internet works is Costa Rica is a few years behind where United States is, just like many parts of the world are. So we can look into a crystal ball and see what's going on there and give you a competitive advantage because that's what's coming here. There's things you can do very profitably here. For example, social selling. The opportunity for social selling, which I'll talk about it shortly, is so big here in Costa Rica, but it's already being utilized in more developed countries, in the United States and Canada. But there's a huge window of opportunity for companies here today. But if we look at print, you'll see that 4% of people's time is spent reading print, but businesses are spending 12% of their money there. Doesn't make sense. If you're not a business that's cutting back on your print spending, you're missing something. You'll see that radio and television are relatively evenly indexed. Same with the internet. In fact, internet consumption is actually going down compared to mobile. Here's the big opportunity. Right now, mobile is growing much faster than anything else. 28% of people's time, when you look at television, radio, newspaper, 28% of their time is spent on mobile. And yet businesses are only spending about 21% of their spend. And that gap is even bigger here in Costa Rica, which represents a big opportunity. So how do you get on top of mobile? What are you doing in your businesses as far as mobile goes? Well, first of all, you want to have an adaptive website. Now, I've talked to business owners who say, well, I don't even know if my website's adaptive. I'll show you how to tell that right now. If you go to your company website, and if you have to do this on your screen to be able to see your site, it's not mobile responsive. Okay, it's not adaptive. And that's a problem for two reasons. Number one, because it's not good for your customer experience. You're looking like behind the times compared to your competitors. But here's the biggest problem. Google now really cares whether your site is mobile responsive. And if it turns out that you are not a mobile-enabled site, Google knocks down your search engine ranking. Companies have begun to fall out of the search engine rankings because their site is not mobile-enabled. And this is something we can do very quickly and very inexpensively to make sure that your site is mobile-enabled. You may have heard this thing, AMP. Google is now talking about the accelerated mobile pages. So one of the things that is very important with your website is how fast it runs. A lot of people don't realize that if your website is running slower, Google will knock you right out of the search engine rankings. And when I say search engines, we all know that. You want to be on the first page of Google, right? You don't want to be on the 10th page. There's a saying, where do you hide a dead body in today's day and age? Where's the best place to hide a dead body? On page 2 of Google. Because nobody ever goes there. It'll never be found. Okay? So we need to make sure that our pages are loading quickly, and that drives us up in the search engine rankings. So a lot of people wonder, how do we advertise on the internet? Where do there's a lot. Search engine optimization, I'm not going to get into today. That's a whole topic in and of itself. If you don't do it correctly, it can actually be very damaging to your business. We do something we call adaptive SEO, which is aligned with Google's best practices. I'm not going to get into SEO today. I'll just talk about paid advertising and how companies pay to advertise. And I wrote an article for Inc. magazine about this because you really want to begin with asking this one question. What do you know about your customers? And depending on what you know about your customers will very much drive your digital advertising strategy. So for example, do you know what their intent is? Do you know what they're searching for? Many times our customers aren't searching for anything. We've got a product that they're not actually searching for because they don't even know about it. So Google PPC, pay-per-click advertising, doesn't work for us. But if they are searching for something, one of the best ways to do that is use Google PPC ads. And I'll tell you something right now. Here in Costa Rica, you're about 3 years behind where United States is in terms of Google pricing. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, Google costs a lot of money. Wait 3 years. Google is an auction, and the more companies spend on Google, the more the price goes up. I can guarantee you that for the next 3 years, you're going to see prices on Google continue to go up. You're going to wish you could roll the clock back to 2017 and be able to get in on Google and get a competitive market share against your competition with what today's prices are. If you think Google is too expensive for you today, you're probably doing it wrong. You probably have the wrong person doing it, okay? Because there is a huge opportunity to gain market share by using PPC advertising. But again, You need to know what people are searching for if you're going to use PPC advertising. For those of you not familiar with it, the way it works is those ads you see up on the top of the page, whether it's Bing or Google, okay, and the side of the page, those are the paid search ads. And businesses only pay when people click on the ads. And so there's different ways you can advertise, obviously. But again, paid search is a very powerful tool. But what if you don't know what their intent is, but you do know who they are? So let me give you an example. Let's say you've got a product and you know that you're targeting moms who have a university education that are 35 to 45 years old and have kids. Well, you can't target people that way on Google, but you can on Facebook. Here's the thing people don't realize about Facebook. First of all, Facebook is the advertising medium of the future. The revenue that Facebook will generate in advertising will probably eclipse Google. Why? Because Facebook knows so much about us. You see, you don't even know how much Facebook knows about you. Facebook is like an iceberg. The stuff you see when you're on Facebook that you think Facebook knows about you represents about 15% of what Facebook really knows. Facebook knows who you're connected to. They know the profiles of all those people. They know the behaviors of all those people. They know which videos you watch, how long you watch them for. They know what you like. They know everything about you. It's spooky. They don't even want you to know how much they know about you. It's so powerful. And we can use this information for advertising. In fact, this is a powerful tool within Facebook, something they call lookalike audiences. If you have an existing customer list or an existing prospect list, we can load that up into the back end of Facebook, and Facebook will use everything they know about all those people. They won't tell you, they won't tell us, but they'll use all that information that they know all about those people and build a profile of the exact person you want to be advertising to. Very powerful in terms of how you can use Facebook for advertising. Of course, most people have no idea that this is possible. So again, that second question is, do you know who they are? Do you know their demographics, their psychographics? The third question, and this really zeroes into what I'll share with you on social selling, is this concept, do you know what they do? Let's say you're looking for medical device sales reps, or you're looking for VPs of purchasing managers of a particular type of industry. You can target that and find that through LinkedIn. LinkedIn is the world's largest, okay, I'm going to date myself here. How many people know what a Rolodex is? Wow. Okay, I'm hoping that it's because you have translators on and you don't understand what I'm saying. I don't think I'm that old, but the concept of a Rolodex back in the day before the internet was there was this device that we would actually have business cards stapled to, and we would be able to keep track of all the contacts that we have. Okay, well, LinkedIn is the largest Rolodex in the world, and we can target over 500 million people through LinkedIn, through ads within the platform. Do you know where they are? We can target people based on where they are geographically, where they're, the malls they're walking into, the stores they're walking into. We put a tag on them based on where they're physically located. We can target people based on what they're saying on Twitter. For example, a client that sells pizza targets people that use a word like hungry or starved, and we can push out an ad for a pizza company, and their cost per acquisition was $1.44. It was their best cost of customer acquisition of any campaign because they know what people are saying on Twitter. And finally, do you know where they've surfed? Do you know where they've gone on the internet? And here's an important principle to understand. You will spend the most money driving someone to your website the first time. The key is that you need to leverage that on an ongoing basis. There's something called remarketing, where we put a pixel on people's website and then we follow them around. You've probably seen that on the internet. You go to somebody's website and now you start seeing their advertisements everywhere. Okay, that's called remarketing. And here's what you need to know about it. These banners start showing up everywhere. We can remarket on Facebook, but here's what you need to know about it. If you're doing any kind of advertising on the internet, okay, a 15 to 20% increase in your budget will represent a 50% increase in your ROI, in your profitability, because remarketing is a highly effective, highly cost-effective form of advertising. And then the last thing I want to talk about just is marketing automation. So we spend all this money driving people to our website. But if only 5% of people become customers, if only 5%, then that means 95% of the people left your site and didn't do anything, right? How are we going to capture those people, right? So marketing automation is a tool that allows us to drip on those people over time. And if we can turn that 5% into just another 5, so out of those 95 that left your site, we can get 5% more, we have now just doubled the performance of your campaign, right? And so there's companies like HubSpot, some of you may have heard of, SharpSpring, there's different platforms, but the bottom line is this is a tool that allows you to take visitors to your site and ramp up your profits. So now let's just talk about social, because we talked about social selling being an important way that companies here in Costa Rica can get ahead of the curve. Well, the first thing you need to know, we've heard a lot about social media. I wonder if within your company, have you locked down all your social properties? Have you locked down your YouTube channel, your LinkedIn page, your Twitter page, your Facebook page? You know, a lot of companies, they'll actually delegate that to somebody, and then the person leaves the company, and they lost their passwords. They lost their control. You've actually lost your LinkedIn page because the intern left, right? So you need to make sure you've locked these down, that the content on these pages is consistent, because that affects your Google ranking. And thirdly, you need to make sure it's secure, that you know where those passcodes are for all of those properties. In fact, you might find that people have already grabbed your company name on the LinkedIn page or Facebook, so you need to lock that stuff down. Reputation management. What are people saying about you out there on the internet? You see, the first thing companies do is they go out and search your reviews. Harvard did a study, and they found that a 1-star increase in your Yelp review can represent a 9% increase in revenue. Just last year, there was research that came out that showed that people believe what is said on online reviews as much as they do what is said by friends and family. So what are people saying about you online? What are people saying about your company? What you need to do is Google your company, just your name and reviews, ABC Company reviews, and find out what's being said about you. Here's the good news. You might have a bad employee, a former employee, your competition, they might be saying things that aren't great about you online. Here's the good news. We can actually change that conversation. We can change that messaging. There's ways we can harness your happy customers and turn them into advocates that drive up your rankings online. So let's talk a few minutes about social selling. What is this thing about social selling? Well, I talked about LinkedIn being the largest Rolodex, the largest database of professionals in the world, 500 million people online through LinkedIn. But do you realize that you can use LinkedIn for free? Some people think LinkedIn is expensive, it's going to cost me a lot of money. No, that's what's beautiful about it. It's powerful and it's free. You need to understand, why do we call it social selling? Because people buy differently than they used to buy. You know, the old way of selling was that we'd send out flyers and billboards and advertising and direct mail and cold calling and all these old ways, email blasts, and we'd hope that we get a small percentage of those people to buy. It used to be that the salesperson controlled the sales process, but it's not like that anymore. The buyer now controls the sales process. But in your company, you might still be selling in the same way as you used to, even though people are buying in a very different way. You see, today, it begins like this. People go online and they start Googling you. They start Googling the product, the service. They start looking at your competition. They're reading blogs. They're reading white papers. The majority of the sales process has already happened before they even contact the company. So you think your salesperson is the beginning of the sales process? No, they're past the middle. It's all happened before people have even contacted your company. They're looking at reviews. They're reading what people are saying about you. They're looking at your company's LinkedIn profile. They're looking at your sales rep's LinkedIn profile. Do you even know what your employees' LinkedIn profiles look like? You know, a lot of people think, no, that's theirs. That's their own private thing. No. These people are working for you. This is your company. What are you doing to influence the narrative to make sure that those LinkedIn profiles are working for you as a company? And I'll talk about that in a minute, just to explain what you need to do. But the bottom line is that the salesperson is no longer the person controlling the information. In the new world, the salesperson needs to be a problem solver, not just an information deliverer. So here's some interesting stats. This is what's happening in the world of social selling. 57% of the buyer's journey is complete before a customer contacts the supplier. Customers rate the salesperson. This is amazing. Customers rate the salesperson as the least influential interaction in the buying cycle. That's by Gartner. 93% of people say they would sooner buy something without having to deal with a salesperson, okay, according to Forrester. So salespeople people don't even want to deal with the salesperson. So how can you change the role of the salesperson within your company? Let's see about how this impacts salespeople. Well, 75% of salespeople that are using social media outperform their peers. Now, are your salespeople using social media? Right? They can outperform the competition. And they earn 4 to 5 times as much. You want to get their attention? When there's an opportunity to learn about social selling, you want to get their attention, they're earning 4 to 5 times more than people who aren't using social selling. So, and according to Forbes. So what is social selling and how does it work? Just real simply, we need to begin with a profile. So that when people are searching for you, what do they see? That LinkedIn profile on your company, the LinkedIn profile on all your salespeople need to be professional, they need to be polished, they need to be in alignment with your brand. Okay, so that's the first step. That's pretty straightforward. Costs you nothing. You might be paying to host your company website. You pay nothing to host your company LinkedIn page. Okay, so get it set up, get it polished, get it working for you. The second thing in social selling is finding the right people. Again, this audience of 500 million professionals, who could you want to sell to that's not already on LinkedIn? There's not many. We have the ability, the old way, we talk about sending out direct mail and hope we get 1% response. It's not like that anymore. With social selling, we can zero in like a heat-seeking missile on the right candidate for you, for your company. And again, all of this is something you can do for free. We need to engage with insights. So you need to begin at the top of that buyer's journey. You need to create white papers, create blog posts, create LinkedIn posts. You need to be publishing content because you don't want to find out after they're halfway through their journey that you've got a potential buyer. You want to build a relationship with them from the very beginning of the process. And that's what social selling is all about. Because here's one thing that's true in Canada, and I'm sure it's true here in Costa Rica, is that people buy from people they like. People buy from people they trust. People buy from people they have relationships with. And social selling is about creating all of that from the beginning of the buyer's journey, where you become a trusted problem solver and source of information. And then finally, we need to build those strong relationships and turn them into leads, turn them into customers, turn them into referrals, because that's where the rubber hits the road. That's where profit is generated. So here's the interesting fact. 93% of companies, so we've got this $500 million or 500 million audience. 93% of companies have received no training whatsoever on how to do social selling. Has your company received any training? Have your sales reps been given any training on social selling? Okay, it's very inexpensive because you're not paying for the advertising. You're going to pay a little bit of money for the training, but the cost is very insignificant. So why do you want to do social selling? Here's the bottom line. Number one, you're going to generate more leads. And I'm not just talking about more quantity, I'm talking about more quality. Number two, you're going to increase your closing rates. It's not about getting a 1% response or a 5% response, because again, we're zeroing in on the right buyers, so we increase the closing rates. We increase the lifetime value of a customer. They buy more often, they keep coming back, because they're buying from people they like. We're building relationships. And then finally, we reduce the cost of sales. This doesn't increase your costs, this reduces your costs, because LinkedIn doesn't make money when it comes to using their profiles and their search tools. Okay, you're going to spend a little bit of money on the training piece, but again, you can dramatically reduce your costs. So you want to talk, if you want more information about that, you can talk to the WSI people here to learn a little bit about how that training works. Just in closing, I want to just share with you, really circle back to what Rahilio said earlier. Disruption is happening. The world is changing in some big ways. And the big mistake that people make is they think the internet has arrived. They think that it's finally here, and this last 22, 23 years has got us to where we are, and it's pretty much, we're near the end of the story. The reality is we are just in the beginning. This is the beginning of chapter 1 of digital disruption. There's this guy named Ray Kurzweil, and Ray says, and he's quoted by McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group, get this, he says the internet will grow more in the next 5 years than it has the last 25 years combined. Now, who the heck is this guy? Well, Ray Kurzweil is 5 best-selling books, 30-year track record of some of the most accurate predictions in technology. He's called The Ultimate Thinking Machine by Forbes, the rightful heir. He's a modern-day Thomas Edison. But here's what's kind of cool. He heads up engineering at Google. So some of this stuff we were seeing, Ray is right at the center of all this stuff. The Google car, autonomous vehicles. Talk about disruption, right? This is going to disrupt one technological advance will have cascading impacts. We're not going to need to buy a car anymore, right? We don't need to buy a cow because we want milk. We don't need to buy chickens because we want eggs. We're not going to need to buy a car. We're going to hit a button and a vehicle will drive up, right? We're going to rent a car just like or we're going to rent those moments. We're not going to need to drive a car. My 6-year-old daughter will never have a driver's license. Just like I don't have a pilot's license because I want to fly in a plane from Canada to Costa Rica. I don't need one, right? Disruption. It's going to change the way homes are built. We're not going to need to have garages in our home anymore. It's going to change the way cities are built. That whole movement over the last hundreds of years of people moving into the city? People are going to begin moving out of the city because we don't need to live near where we work anymore. We're going to be so much more productive in our vehicles because we're not driving them. It's going to disrupt industries. Think about auto insurance. Billions of dollars in that industry. Gone overnight. Why do we need auto insurance? There aren't car crashes anymore. United States alone, over 40,000 people a year die in car crashes, including 3,000 children. One technological advance, gone. What about the trucking industry? 4 million people in the United States alone will be out of work because they either drive trucks or they drive taxis or they drive Ubers. Gone almost overnight. So disruption of healthcare. Do you realize that the majority of healthcare costs and the majority of the costs in a hospital relate to auto accidents? What's going to happen in healthcare when we have that burden gone, right? It's going to disrupt so many things, one technological advance. And think about artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, and all the other things we've seen today. So disruption is going to be dramatic. And here's the cool thing Ray's working on, which I think is really neat. It was on actually, I'll just share with you. We think about Uber, right? We think it's a way to get from point A to point B. In the future, we're going to pull out our Uber. And do they have like Uber X and Uber Black here? You select what kind of an Uber you want. Okay, well in the future, we're going to select Uber Office, and up into our driveway is going to be a vehicle. It doesn't even look like a vehicle anymore. It's like a box, a small office, and we get in there and it's a fully equipped office. Or we'll select Uber Club, and what will show up will kind of look like this. It might look like a lounge or a movie theater, but it's just like it's a club car. Or we'll select Uber Bed. 11 o'clock at night, a vehicle pulls up to your house, which is a horizontal-shaped vehicle. You get into that, you arrive 7 hours later in another city, slept all night long, and you've just been teleported somewhere else. So it's going to rethink the way transportation is done. One technological advance, the autonomous car. But again, here's what I think is cool, what Ray and Google are working on. Time magazine did a cover story. They said, "Can Google solve death?" And I love the subtitle here. It says, "The search giant is launching a venture to extend the human lifespan. That would be crazy if it wasn't Google," is what Time says. Ray Kurzweil is working on that with life extension. Under their alphabet division, they've got a company called Calico where they believe they can dramatically, if not indefinitely, extend human lifespan. So the bottom line is this. When we talk about changing more in the next 5 years than it has in the last 25 years combined, Ray Kurzweil helps people try to understand this. He tells a very simple parable. He says, imagine a king in ancient medieval times, and the king wants to reward this family for their loyalty and their service to the kingdom. And he sits with the patriarch of the family and says, how can I ever repay your company or your family for this loyalty you've shown to the kingdom? And they talked about different ways and different mechanisms. Finally, the king came up with an idea. He said, let's take a chessboard, which was a popular game at the time, and let's put 1 grain of rice on the first square of the chessboard. And we'll put 2 grains on the second square. We'll put 4 grains on the third square, and we'll keep doubling it on every square of the chessboard. Well, the noblemen agreed to that, and it was a great plan until they got to the 32nd square. Because by the 32nd square, the amount of rice was 100,000 kilos, which was the entire rice production of the kingdom for 1 year. So now it's starting to get pretty costly. Ray Kurzweil says that if you think about digital disruption as a chessboard, everything we've experienced today has got us to the 32nd square. Where we are today is the 32nd square. In the next 5 years, he said, we're going to the 64th. And what does that look like? Well, that pile of rice would be about this size, the size of Mount Everest. 461 billion metric tons of rice, which is the entire rice production of planet Earth for an entire year. Now, let's say Ray is not correct. Let's say he's a super optimist and he's out in left field and he's only half right. The reality is that the disruption is going to be massive in the next 5, let's say it's even 10 years. If we as businesses are sitting here we're looking in the rearview mirror, expecting the future will be similar to the past. If we're not changing the way we're doing businesses, if we're not thinking about digital and how our businesses will be disrupted, then the reality is we will be disrupted. And disrupted in many industries means wiped out, right? And yet at the same time, this represents massive opportunity. Some people see this as a mountain of disruption. We see this as a mountain of opportunity. And I hope that WSI's presence here in Costa Rica can help all of you as businesses navigate this digital roadmap in the years ahead, and that you capitalize on the opportunity that digital disruption will present here in Costa Rica. Thank you.